F1 owners revealed their engine blueprint for 2021 last week, but the initial outlines have already been met with scepticism by manufacturers, and Ferrari subsequently threatened to stop racing entirely, with President Sergio Marchionne saying he's not happy with the direction that Liberty is taking the sport. It's not the first time, Peter, that they've threatened to quit or other teams have threatened. How seriously should we be taking it?
I think very seriously, because it's always been there. We should never underplay the job Bernie's done at keeping Ferrari happy all these years. I've made this point before on the show. This is the key to everything in Formula One, keeping Ferrari happy and part of the programme. And with respect to Liberty, I think they've come in and they've approached it from a fairly creative business media type way without taking into account all the undercurrents and the history of Ferrari and what they want. And the engine thing is just the tip of the iceberg. The reality is Ferrari will want as much money as they think they're due because of what they bring to Formula One. They don't really care about any other team. All they want to make sure is that they get what they want. And that's what Bernie's always made sure they have. And now with all this engine thing, it's an excuse for Ferrari to say, look, unless we get everything sorted, we could easily pull out. We're bigger than Formula One, a point I've made before, and they are. And without Ferrari, Formula One, I'm afraid, is just another motor racing championship. Nothing wrong with that, but it won't be Formula One. And we need to take it very, very seriously.
I disagree on some of that, and the reason I disagree is because I think that what we've had, particularly under Bernie, for so long, and I get the importance of Ferrari and the historical importance of Ferrari, but we have been giving them an advantage by throwing more money at them than any other team. And for me, that is like giving a football team an 12th man on the pitch. You know, we know that Formula One, your budget directly, if you spend it right, correlates to success and performance. And so we've been handing them an unfair advantage. I think,
and yet they still actually haven't capitalised on it because they haven't won either title this year.
Absolutely, but that's their internal doings. They've failed in that respect. However, as a sport, we've been giving them that advantage. I think modern Formula One fans want to see a much more level playing field, and they want to see many more teams get the opportunity to fight at the front. Yes, we all recognise Ferrari's importance, but I think Formula One would survive without Ferrari. I think, yes, they may go and start a new championship, and I can see a value in that, and people would probably watch it. But Formula One is Formula One, and there's much more than Ferrari involved in it.
So, Ferrari, you feel F1 would cope without Ferrari, but could Ferrari cope without F1? You obviously agree that it could with Marchionne.
It depends what you mean by Formula One. If you mean this enormous economy that we have at the moment that we call Formula One, that would not exist without Ferrari. Of course, a championship would exist without Ferrari, and we could call it Formula One, and we'd have great racing probably, and a lot of the F2 teams coming in and doing well, and it'd be a lot of fun actually. I'd love it. But having said that, I'm talking about the Formula One we have at the moment, which is, if you think about it as a brick wall, it's very, very strong, and it's very high, and it's very big. But if you take one brick out of that wall, the whole business model collapses. And that's why all the teams are starting to realise that, wow, this is all quite confusing. What's going to happen with Liberty? And Liberty are realising that if they do touch one of those bricks, it will affect the business model, because that's how fragile Bernie's business model was. While the bricks were in place, it was impervious, and that included looking after Ferrari.
But the bricks were only in place because Bernie was scared of losing Ferrari, so elevated them to an unfair position.
Because Bernie's worked with Ferrari since 1980. Absolutely. That's why. That's what it's all about. That wall has been built since 1980.
But surely the business model now, look, we're now in a new era of Formula One with Liberty coming in. We need to be looking 10, 20 years in the future. The business model is the thing that has to change so that we're not so reliant on one particular. I agree with you. If Mercedes and Ferrari suddenly walked away, what have we got left? Very little. But that's an issue with the business model. We need to create something, and this is where these new regulations, I think, could have gone much further, where we start attracting not just automotive manufacturers, but a new wave of investors in our sport.
Yeah.
Because it's not sustainable, is it? The current model, surely.
Well, we use the word business model. It's a private club still. It's not actually a business. We're not talking Wall Street here. We're not talking NASDAQ. It is a private club. And Bernie's thing about, I'm the captain of the ship, and if you don't like it, get off the ship, actually still applies. Even though it looks pretty glossy now, it is still a private club with all those teams sitting around trying to come to some sort of agreement about things. Well, I think the answer is to look after Ferrari in the way that Bernie did it, probably to get Bernie back in some sort of way to work with Liberty, doing the job he's done with the teams. Because
is that a long-term solution?
Well, the long-term solution is you know, we have to think, do we want Formula One to be what it is, or do we want Formula One to be a business model that works in terms of pounds, shillings and pence, but doesn't work in terms of the size of Formula One? We could have two world championships like boxing. It could easily happen.
We could, but Formula One has to adapt. Formula One today is not what it was 10 or 20 years ago, and that's not necessarily a good or a bad thing. You can have an opinion on that. 10 or 20 years from now, it will have evolved and has to evolve.